Good afternoon, Mark, and thank you so much for joining Custard Connects and sharing your insight and telling us a little bit more about hospitality action. So, good afternoon.
Hi, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. So, before this situation kicked off, I mean, how would you, I'm hoping lots of people already know about hospitality action, but how would you summarise the direction of hospitality action?
Yeah, so Hospitality Action is the benevolent charity for the UK hospitality industry, and in short, we offer lifelines to people who work or have worked in the industry and find themselves in difficulty or crisis. And difficulty or crisis tends most commonly to be around financial poverty issues, physical and mental health. So those are the areas where we typically help people. We help people in a variety of ways. Sometimes it's just money to get them through a difficult period, but sometimes it might be funding for home adaptations in the wake of the onset of a life-changing illness. Could be helping cover funeral costs for people who have a bereavement and can't afford to cover a funeral themselves. Could be helping people with a domestic abuse situation. So all sorts of ways in which we help the industry in normal times.
And normal times is, something we're all seeking, but obviously the word crisis is now it's just in our everyday lexicon. And of course, what you've been doing is supporting and looking after the industry. How has your strategy had to adapt, particularly over the last 3 months, to continue to support and support even more people going through really tough times?
Yeah, we have had to adapt. I guess it's worth saying that we still help people who work or have worked in the industry and find themselves in difficulty or crisis. It's just that now the prevalence of issues tend to be based around COVID. So people still have health issues, they still have issues around poverty, but nowadays everybody comes to us tends to be mentioning COVID because it's touching all parts of our life. So in a way, we're still doing what we've always done, but I guess there's more of an urgency to it now because many more people are struggling and therefore reaching out. And I guess also people need help now. They don't need help in the coming months with buying a new wheelchair to help them. They need help now to put food on the table or pay a bill that's really urgent. So that sort of urgency has really come to the fore. People don't necessarily need loads of money. They just need a bit of money now to get them through the next few weeks before universal credit comes through, or touch wood, before their business starts up again.
And I mean, you've always been so great at being able to identify and support those in need, but it must be incredibly difficult now with so many people, and as you say, the urgency and the enormity of the need right across the board. How do you make those decisions, or what is the process for deciding where that money or where that resource and support goes to?
Yeah, as you would expect, we have criteria and we have parameters that we work to in normal times. We like to help as many people as we can, but clearly we're not here to help millionaires, and we need to be careful that we help the right people. So in normal times, we apply the usual assessment criteria to make sure that we're helping the right people. Obviously, at the moment, again, these aren't normal times. We wish we could help more people than we're able to, but we're not a big charity. We're an industry benevolent charity. So we made a decision early on, just the week before lockdown began, that we would just help as many people as we could, and that we would have to live with that. So yes, we'd love to help more people, and there were clearly tens of thousands of people out there, possibly hundreds of thousands, who could do with our support. But at the end of the day, we're not the government. We're not here to offer social services. We're just doing the very best we can. So yeah, we of course work to criteria, but it's just a question of doing as much as we can with the funds that we have available to us. And
in addition to that, and you run a very successful and much needed scheme, the Employee Assistance Programme, of which actually we use, and my team are very grateful for. And I think particularly at this time, that must be well used at the moment and in demand. But how are you coping with that? How are you seeing demand using that programme?
Yeah, it's a good question. And yeah, use of the employer assistance program has absolutely gone through the roof, as you would imagine. A lot of people contacted us very early on, just asking for guidance on what furloughing was. What was this new word nobody had ever heard before? And we offer legal and financial guidance, as well as a host of other support mechanisms through the EAP. So I think initially people were just saying, "Well, what's going on? Where can I get help? What does being furloughed mean? What are my employment rights?" So there was lots of support needed at the outset from that perspective. We're very lucky that we work with a bunch of third parties, all of which are fabulous, resilient, and robust, and they all had crisis management scenarios to fall back on. So I'm really proud to say that the EAP has stood up and it supported all the people that approached it for support, and that will continue. But yeah, absolutely, more and more people are getting involved, getting in touch to ask for help. And I think in the midterm, we'll see a lot more people needing advice with depression related to no longer working, and support, advice around what their HR rights are. And I think it's going to be a really valuable tool in future. And so thank heavens we've got such great partners running it with us.
And I mean, you mentioned earlier the scale of people that need that kind of support, and absolutely, particularly around mental well-being and depression, and of course huge shifts in people's lives. What concerns have you got, particularly around, we know there's going to be a huge fallout in terms of redundancies, career uncertainty, people losing their businesses? We're hoping government support will negate that happening, but there is obviously a lot of uncertainty, and people have gone through a very high pressured, intense period of time and without any answers. So what are your concerns about what that might leave behind?
I guess my concerns for the industry are that it can't get cracking and welcoming guests and customers over the threshold. There are clearly so many aspects to this. There's the 2-meter rule, and of course there's lobbying to see whether we can bring that to one meter. But there are so many hurdles to opening effectively. So I think that's a real issue. But what does that mean to us? Well, clearly, if more businesses close, more people are redundant, and therefore there'll be more call upon our support. And as I said before, we're not a huge charity. And we'll need to do the best we can, but that's why it's so important that we take every opportunity that presents itself to tell the industry and the wider world what we're doing, and just raise funds, because it's a very binary operation. Money in means more money out, so we have to keep on banging the drum and getting more people involved in what we're doing.
And I mean, this industry is so unique, isn't it? The way that everybody rallies together and shares knowledge and shares pain. And in particular, I think the way that everyone's supporting the challenge you've set, the 20,000 challenge, I think has been incredible, and it has given people a reason to come together. What are your views about how this industry does come together, and how it could even improve on that?
Yeah. Well, it does come together, and we've seen that time after time. I think it's an industry that's very much based upon camaraderie and teamwork, and delighting customers and guests. And I think people have really struggled with this loss of purpose and identity. People work in hospitality as a vocation. It's not just a job, it's an absolute lifestyle. People work long hours and they love what they do, and they get a real thrill from it. Suddenly that's being whipped out from under them. They're at home and they're struggling with all this spare time. So I think people have been very glad to find outlets for all of this time and the energy that they're not putting into their usual work. And they've been exerting that energy in so many fabulous ways, whether it's supporting us through 1,000,001 different fundraising initiatives, or whether it's baking bread or making meals for frontline NHS staff. I think people have, for their own mental health as much as anything else, people have needed to find outlets for all this spare time and this spare energy, and we've been blessed to be the beneficiaries of a lot of that energy. So yeah, we've been very lucky that people have had to find something else to fill their time with, and often that's been raising funds for HA. Long may that continue.
And I mean, you're right, everyone wants to keep busy, and I think the great thing is that they've been able to keep Hospitality Action out there and be talking about it and be very active and sharing. But one of the things that you do rely on are large events and the bringing together of the industry, or being seen as a beneficiary to some of the industry events. What are your concerns? Because of course the events industry has had a big knock in terms of mass gatherings, and people are struggling to predict what might happen with large events, and also sponsorship and whether it's financially viable to host a lot of these events. What are you planning for now over the next year?
Yeah, so firstly, I think it's about innovation. So you mentioned our challenge, which is the 20,000 mile challenge. So we're challenging people to walk, run, cycle, connect their Fitbit to a platform, and which is also connected to a fundraising aspect, and help us get around the 20,000 miles that constitutes the length of the coastline for the British Isles. So there's a thing that we never dreamt of doing a few months ago. In a way, it's in place of the Cotswold Cycle Challenge, which we've held every year for many years. But it was a question of saying, well, if we can't do that, let's do something else. And then the fundraising team went away and found this very innovative solution. And we've now got about approaching 400 people getting involved this weekend. I think funds raised are up to about £22,500. So that's wonderful, and we'll have to do more of that because it doesn't look like we'll be running major events anytime soon. We've had to postpone or cancel several events already in April and May. June again, we've got things that should have been going on that won't be. We have our big fundraiser, Social Sunday, in the first week of every July, and again that won't happen. So there's £150,000 budgeted that isn't going to happen. So firstly, innovation to find other ways of filling the gaps, and then secondly, we need to move further down the path of third-party fundraising. I think the charity has a great tradition of lovely events that people love to come to, but of course events come with a lot of work and a lot of cost up front. So we have been evolving our fundraising towards a model that covers events but also third-party fundraising, and by that I mean things like operators putting £1 on a bill, or having a pizza special for the month that we get £1 from every time it's sold. So we're going to start pushing out to the industry to ask it to get more involved in those sorts of initiatives. And we're going to do that informed by the fact that we've seen a huge outpouring of love and affection for the industry from the general public. Our emergency fund drew probably £150,000 from individual donations from people who have no connection with the industry. But I think they're people who've realised that they really keenly miss their pint in their favourite pub, or their favourite dish in the restaurant up the road. Suddenly that's all gone, and something they've taken for granted is now leaving a hole in their lives. So people are really realizing how much they love hospitality, how much they want it back. And therefore, if we can give them opportunities to support in future when they do go back to hotels, restaurants and pubs and bars, I think they will do, whether it's £1 on the bill or 50p on a cocktail or whatever. But we've got some exciting and quite fun plans that we're going to go out to the market with soon. But I think third-party fundraising to capitalize on that newfound or newly realized love for the industry amongst the public has got to be a way forward for us.
How are you prioritizing? Because of course you've got some incredible projects that the Hospitality Action has done so successful. The London Patient, for example. How are you managing to? This must all be quite overwhelming. So how are you actually managing to prioritize and to think ahead and to strategize when it's very difficult to plan?
Yeah, I think in terms of strategizing, I think at the moment we're just dealing with the here and now. We know that we have our ongoing plans to move the charity forward, but I think really it's just a question of helping as many people now as we can, raising as much money as quickly. That's not to say we don't have an eye over the horizon, but we're trying to just fight the fight for now and just help as many people as we can. We receive emails that would make you weep from people saying, I don't know how I'm going to feed my baby boy or baby girl a couple of days from now. So that's what we're dealing with. And I think, that's more important at the moment as our focus. In terms of how we're coping, the team is being absolutely brilliant. They're working all hours. I think most of us didn't take a day off for the first 3 weeks of lockdown. We were just going right through, just trying to push as hard as we could to create the emergency appeal and then quickly start to spend the money. But it's worth saying that because of the issue around events that you mentioned, we're not managing lots of events as we normally would, and therefore we've been able to second some of the fundraising team on to grant giving. So it's been about secondment and people learning new skills and people being willing to just crack on and roll their sleeves up. So by hook or by crook, we've been able to help well over 2,000 families through the emergency grant, and that builds every day. But you know, we're in a good place at the moment. We have masses of support from the industry. We've had loads of volunteer support from people around the industry, and I think it's worth mentioning at this point that we have a scheme called the Golden Friends scheme. It's a contact or outreach program to keep in touch with industry retirees, to keep loneliness and isolation at bay. Now, in good times, that's just about sending the occasional newsletter or sending them a card at Christmas or their birthday, just so they know they're not forgotten by the industry. But we realized early on in lockdown that these people were at high risk of being forgotten about. So we mobilized an army of about 250 people from around the industry, all of whom are regularly phoning our Golden Friends. Normally the answer is, thank you so much, lovely to hear from you and lovely to be remembered. But occasionally the answer has been, actually, I'm struggling to get a prescription, or I can't get any food, or my dog needs a walk. And then we've been able to either find a local volunteer or to reach out to Age UK or other agencies. So again, yes, we're working hard. Yes, the team is having to pull the stops out, but also we're really grateful to the volunteers who are helping us do what we do.
So just, I think what will be quite useful is to just share how, if people want to be part of that scheme, they can just go onto the website and complete the forms and get in touch. And other ways is obviously do the fundraising, obviously support colleagues and the industry that are involved in that 20,000 mile challenge, and to look at the EAP scheme, because it's not too late, is it, for people to be part of that?
Not at all. And it's been really reassuring for us to see that we've had some new clients come on board in the last couple of months. So I think enlightened businesses are realizing that all they're going to have when they reopen is their premises and their people. And that's what is going to make them succeed or fail. So the enlightened businesses are going to continue with their EAP and perhaps sign up to one, because yeah, never more than now, you need to keep your teams happy, healthy and productive. Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for joining me this afternoon, and it's great to hear about what Hospitality Action's been up to.
Thanks for the opportunity. Good to speak to you, Petra.